Welcome to the channel. In today's tutorial, we are going to build a simple file sharing application from scratch. We'll start by looking at how file sharing app works. First, open any file sharing apps and click on send files. Pick a files and you'll see a link is generated. You can copy and share. When someone clicks on that link, they can easily download the file. In this video, we'll recreate that functionality using MERN stack. You will learn how to set up your project and create a backend with Node.js, Express and MongoDB. Let's jump into the code. Let's start by dragging an empty folder into your IDE. Next, we will create a frontend folder using byte. Open your terminal and run npm create byte at latest. Press enter. Then give your folder a name. I'm using frontend and select options for React and JavaScript. This process will generate your frontend folder with all necessary files. Now navigate into the frontend folder by running cd frontend. Once inside, install the dependencies with npm install. You will notice that the package.json file contains a script labeled dev byte. To launch our frontend, simply execute npm run dev. And just like that, your frontend is up and running. Now, we will build the UI for our app. First, remove the existing code inside the return statement in app.jsx and replace it with a simple div tag. Also, delete any unnecessary files that comes with the default setup. Inside the div, add an h1 tag with your title, such as file sharing app. You can see the changes on the screen immediately. Next, let's change the CSS for our screen. Open app.css and clear out all the existing styles. In your app.jsx file, give the div a class name. Let's name it container, so we can easily apply styles to it. Now in app.css, write .container with curly braces, and inside this, first give it a background color. Now if you open the page, you will notice that the background color appears only behind the text, not across the full screen. That's why in CSS we have to write with 100 BW to cover the full width and set the height to 100 bh so that the background covers the entire page, and here the background covers the entire screen. Now I wanted to center this text on the page. Write display flags, justify content center and align items center. The text is centered now. Here we need to add an input button for uploading files. After the h1 tag, add a new div tag and inside it include an input tag with its type set to file. Now you will see an input button appear. However, this button is not positioned under the title. Update your CSS by adding flex direction column to your container. This change will stack the elements vertically. Now, if we click on the choose file button, we can select files from our PC. However, we don't want this default button. We want to replace it with a custom button. Add a button tag here and write upload inside it. This will be our upload button. The aim is that when I click the upload button, it should trigger the functionality of the input button. For that functionality, we will use useref. Here write upload ref is equal to useref and import useref from React. And inside this input tag, declare ref as upload ref. Inside the button tag, write on click and pass a function named handle upload. and create the handle upload function here. Here write upload ref.current.click. This will open the file picker when the upload button is clicked. It's working correctly. Now we want to hide the choose file button. So inside this input tag, give it a style of display none. This will hide the element like this. Now we want to store files first to perform an action after selecting files using the file upload button. For that, we will use useState. Create a state called file and a function called setFile, and import useState from React. Write an onChange event inside the input tag. This onChange event will call the setFile function, and the value will be extracted from the event. Normally, we use event.target.value for extracting values from text fields, drop-downs, and checkboxes. But in this case, we need to use event.target.files. The upload buttons has functionality to choose multiple files. Although this returns an array, we want to work with only one file. So we will extract the file from the 0th position of this array. That means if the upload button selects multiple files, let's say file 1, file 2 and file 3, we'll pick file 1 only by placing 0 here, ensuring that only the first file is selected. Now to verify that it's working or not, we can print file to the console. Open the browser's inspect mode, choose a file, and you should see that the file is printed with information such as name, type, etc. We will create a function for making an API call in another file later. For now, we need to call this function whenever the file changes. We can achieve this functionality using useEffect. The useEffect hook takes two arguments. The first one is callback function, and the second one is dependency array. In this array, we will insert file, meaning that whenever the file changes, useEffect will trigger the callback function. Inside the callback function, we will create another function that collects data from the file and passes it to the API call function, which we will define later in separate file. Within this function, we will create form data. In form data, we will add two things. First one is the file's name. As we saw earlier, the file contains a name property and the file itself. Finally, we will call the function responsible for making the API request. Let's create our backend folder. Now navigate to backend with cd backend. Next, we will initialize node with npm init-y. You should see a new package.json appear, and open this package.json. This main field is declared as index.js. Since main field is declared as index.js, we will create a new file called index.js. This will be our server's entry point. And in the terminal, we will install Express and .env. This does two things: installs our packages and creates that package log.json you see here. Now open this index.js. First import Express, then declare app as Express. Now declare a port where our backend will run. In this case, set it to 9000. Now write app.listen, which takes two things: port and a callback function. Now in this callback function, we'll print a string. Let's say server is running on port, and this variable. This will print server is running on port 9000. To start the server, go to package.json. Inside scripts, replace the existing line with start and node index.js. Now in the backend folder, run npm start. This will start our backend server. After running this command, a line will be printed in the terminal. Server is running on port 9000. This message is coming from the callback function inside app.listen. We don't want to import packages using this typical syntax. Instead, we will use the module system for imports. To do this, go to your package.json file and add type module. Next, update your import statements to use the module type. In the backend, we need to install Mongoose, as we will be using MongoDB to create our database. Now, create a folder named database, and inside that folder, create a file called db.js. In this file, import Mongoose and define a function named connection. We will need a MongoDB connection URL, which we will get later, but for now, just declare it. Inside the connection function, use mongoose.connect and pass the URL. Export this connection. In index.js, at the bottom, write this connection function and import this function from db.js. In db.js, chain a .then method to handle the successful connection, printing a database connected message if everything goes well. After that, add a .catch to handle any errors and print them to the console. Now, open MongoDB in your browser. Click on New Project. Then provide a name for your project and click Create Project. Select the free cluster option, enter your cluster name and choose a region. After that, click Create Deployment. Next, create a username and password for your MongoDB project. Then click Create Database User. Now, click on Choose Connection String, select Compass and copy the provided URL. Paste this URL into your code where the MongoDB connection string should go. And here write your username and password. Once we run the backend, you should see a database connected message in the terminal if the connection is successful. Now let's install NodeMon. It is used to automatically restart the server when we make changes to our code. Now in package.json, in this start script, replace node with NodeMon. Now let's create the API endpoint to upload files. First, create a folder named routes, and inside that folder, create a file named api.js. Import Express, and then define a router using express.router. Next, create a router.post method. Since we want to send data to the database, inside post method, pass an endpoint and a router. After that, export the router from this file. In your index.js file, write app.use to connect the router. Make sure to pass / as the path, which will link all the routes from API.js to this route path. And pass this router. This will make all the routes in the API.js file accessible from the / path. Import this router. Now we need to create a controller to handle the upload request. Create a folder named controller, and inside it create a file called uploadcontroller.js. In this file, start by defining a function called uploadController. This function will contain all the logic for handling file uploads. Inside the uploadController function, use a try-catch block. In the uploadController, we will pass the parameter request and response. The catch block will handle the errors, returning an error message with a status of 500. In the try block, we will add the functionality for uploading the file to the database. Since browser block cross-origin request by default, we need to use CORS to allow communication between the frontend and backend, especially because we are using port 5173 for the frontend and port 9000 for the backend. To enable CORS, install it in the backend with npm install CORS. After the installation, use CORS in your backend like this. This will allow the frontend and backend, which are running on different ports, to communicate properly. Now open upload controller and print something here to confirm that we have reached this controller through the frontend, and export upload controller. In API.js, import upload controller. Next, we need to make a post request to the upload endpoint from the frontend. So in the frontend, create a folder named service, and inside it create a file called api.js. In this file, define a function named upload file and pass file data as a parameter. Inside this function, create a try catch block. If an error occurs, the catch block will handle it. In the try block, we will make an API call to the backend. Write const response equal await fetch and pass the backend URL. We are using port 9000 for the backend. Add a / followed by the upload endpoint we declared in the backend. Then add a comma and open curly braces. Set the method to post and the body to file data. Finally, return the response. Now, in apps.jsx, insert the API call function. Call the upload file function that we just created in api.js and pass file data to it. Import upload file at the top of the file. Now run the backend and try to upload a file. Here we got an error. In app.jsx, insert the API call function. Okay. The API call function is trying to add name and file to file data even when no file is selected. To fix this, we need to wrap this logic inside a condition. Cut this portion of the code and write if file and curly braces and paste this logic inside this block. This ensures that the code only executes if a file exists. Now, if we run the backend and upload a file, we should see the message from upload controller printed in the backend terminal, confirming that our frontend is successfully calling the backend. And we printed this from upload controller in the try block of upload controller. Now, before we hit this upload controller, we need to use a middleware because we have some work left before reaching this controller, such as saving the file to a designated folder, attaching file information to the user request, and handling file uploads by processing multi-part request. So let's write a middleware here, and for the middleware, let's create a folder middleware, and inside this folder create a file named upload.js. We will use Multer to process incoming file uploads. So in the backend, let's install Multer by running npm install Multer. Then import Multer in upload.js. Next, we initialize middleware instance with Multer by calling Multer function and passing a configuration object. Set a destination folder where the uploaded files will be stored. In my case, I named it file folder. You can choose whatever you want and export this middleware instance. In API.js, replace this middleware with our Multer instance and use .single and pass file. As we pass the file information from the front end as the name of file. Now in upload controller, let's verify if the middleware attached the file to request.file. And here I noticed I made a mistake by switching the order of parameters in our controller function. Let's switch these two parameters and print request.file and run it. And look at the terminal. The file details are printed here. By default, a folder named file folder is created, and the uploaded file is saved inside it. This means our middleware is working perfectly. In the upload controller, we continue our code to save data into the database. We want to store two pieces of information, the file's path and its name. To do this, we create an object that holds these details. In the terminal, we can see that the file path is provided, which tell us where the file is stored. In this case, the file is stored in file folder. So we use request.file.path to capture this information. Likewise, the file's name appears as original name in the terminal. So we use request.file.originalName. Next, we need to create a model to store and manage this data in MongoDB. So we create a folder named model. Inside this folder, create a file called filemodel.js. Now create a schema for the file using mongo's.schema. At the top of the file, import mongoose. In this schema, define a path field with the type string and mark it as required. And do the same for the name field. Now write const file model equal mongoose.model, and inside this pass files and file schema. Here files will be the collection name and file schema is the schema we just created. Finally, export this model. Now, in our upload controller, we use fileModel.read to save the file data into the MongoDB database. We pass the file object, which contains the file's path and name to this function. This creates a new entry in the file collection. Because saving data to the database is an asynchronous operation, we use the await keyword and ensure that our function is declared as asynchronous. We can print the file object here, and if we run this and upload a file, in the console we can see this. The output includes properties such as path, name, and the MongoDB generated ID. Finally, we'll return a response to the frontend. Especially, we will return this path with MongoDB generated ID because using this path, user and frontend can access the file or download this file. For that, we send a response with a status code of true 100 and an object containing the file path. We use backticks to include the file's ID. For example, if we search an image online, we'll notice that the URL contains ID and first portion is the backend URL. So in our code, we append our backend URL and we are using port 9000 for our backend. With a forward slash, if we again open this browser, it's the collections names. So in our code, we'll use our collections names, and in this case, we set our collections name as files. This completes the upload controller setup for saving the file into MongoDB and return a response to the frontend. Now, if we open the response, we can see that inside this upload, it's provided a path to the frontend. And if we copy it and paste it to the browser, so we can't get anything. There is a message said that cannot get. It's simply because we just created our post request, not the get request. So now we will make our get request. So in API file, write router.get and pass the endpoint. After that endpoint, pass file ID as a params and write controller's name. Now open upload controller file. We will replace this default export to named export, and down here we will make our download controller, and this will be a sync function as well. Inside this function we will make our try catch block, and catch block will handle the errors. And inside this try block we will write const file equal await file model dot find by id, and inside this we will pass files id, and we get this files id by the params as we set files id as a parameter in this endpoint. So here write request.params.file id, and if there is no file existed, then this block will handle this with a status code of 404 and the message file not found. And our target is, if the user click on the path, the file will automatically download to the device. So that we'll write response.download and pass the file path and file name. And now in API, let's import this download controller. Now if we copy this path from the response and paste it in browser, here we can see image is downloaded after hitting the enter. Now we have completed the backend functionality to send a response to the front end and verified it by pasting the link into a web browser where the file downloads after hitting enter. We can now handle this response in the front end. Our goal is to display the response path as a link below the upload button. First, we need to store the file path returned from the backend. To do this, we will use useState hook. Define the state variable res and a function setRes using useState. So res variable will hold the URL and the function setRes will update the res after hitting the API. Whenever the user uploads a file, we will update the state with the file path. So here write setRes and inside it pass response.path. This means as soon as the backend responds, the file path will be stored in res. Now let's show the file path as a link below the upload button. So here take anchor tag and inside this ref pass our result, and this result will show the link. Now run this app and upload a file. Here we can see a link is appeared. We can copy this link and share it with someone, and they can download our shared file. So far we have successfully built our file sharing app using MERN stack, and right now our file sharing app works only on localhost, which means we can't share it with others. To make it accessible online, we need to deploy it. So let's start the deployment process and make our app live. Before start deploying, we have some work left in MongoDB. Open your project in MongoDB and select this network access option. Click on edit and select this allow access from anywhere. This allows any device from any location to connect to your MongoDB cluster. We will use render to deploy our project. Our project directory contains two main folders, frontend and backend. Inside the backend folder, we have package.json, packagelog.json, and node modules. We will move this to the root directory of our project. Now the package.json is in root folder. So to access this index.js, we need to add backend and a forward slash before index.js. This tells the start script to open backend folder and inside this run index.js. Additionally, replace nodemon with node because nodemon is primarily used for development and node is recommended for production. Next, write this build script. Inside this build, write npm install. This will install dependencies for the backend. And with a logical and operator, write npm installs double dash prefix frontend. And this will navigate into frontend folder and install its dependencies. And again with a logical and operator, and write npm run build and double dash prefix frontend. This will run the build script inside the frontend folder to generate production ready files. And now in the terminal, write npm run build. And after this, you can see a folder named dist is created inside this frontend folder. Now our target is when the backend starts, it should also serve the frontend. To achieve this, update index.js inside the backend folder. Here write const double underscore and dir name and write path.resolve and import path from path. Now write app.use express.static and this serve the static file such as HTML, CSS, JavaScript, image file, etc. from our frontend. And inside this pass this dir name and dist folder. And inside frontend we will get the dist folder. And now write app.get and this. This ensures that index.html will served from the dist folder when user access this site. So we have successfully completed the setup so that the frontend will be automatically served when the backend starts. Now we need to hide our important information from the code. For example, the port number, backend URL, and MongoDB connection string. To do this, we will use .env. We have already installed .env while setting up this backend. If it is not installed, install it now. Create a .env file and store the sensitive information there. Inside the .env file, define the port variable. We are using port 9000. Now, in index.js, import .env from .env. And below this app, write .env.config. Access the environmental variable using process.env.port. The port variable comes from the .env file. Next, we will do the same in upload controller.js. Import .env and call .env.config. Move the backend URL to the .env file by creating a variable named backend URL. In upload controller.js, access it by using process.env.backend URL in a variable. And down here, use string interpolation with $sign and the curly braces and insert this variable. Similarly, in db.js, move the MongoDB connection string to .env under the variable MongoDB URL. In db.js, import .env, call .env.config and access the variable using process.env.mongodb URL. Now we will do the same for the frontend. Create a .env file in the frontend directory. If we open the file api.js, here we used our backend URL. So we have to move it to .env file. So copy this path and set it in a variable in .env. Ensure that the variable name starts with byte. Access it in api.js using import.meta.env.byte backend URL. Now replace double quotes with backticks and delete this portion and use string interpolation to insert this variable. This will keep our sensitive information secure and out of the main code base. we will upload this project to GitHub. Before uploading, we need to make sure that both .env files are ignored and not uploaded to the repository. To do this, in the frontend folder, open .gitignore. If you don't have .gitignore, you can create one and add .env to gitignore so that Git will ignore this .env file during commits. And in the root directory, here we can see we don't have any .gitignore file. So for hiding this .env file, we need to create a .gitignore file. Now open this .gitignore and inside it add .env. This will prevent our environment file from being uploaded to GitHub. After uploading your project files to GitHub, open the render dashboard in your browser. Click on New and select Web Service. In the Git Provider section, choose the repository of the app you just uploaded. Next, give your project a name in the corresponding field. Scroll down to the language section and select Node. And keep the branch as it is. Render will automatically detect it from your Git repository. Scroll down a bit more. For the build command, if you check the package.json file, we can see it's set to build. So here enter npm run build. For the start command, it's defined as start in package.json. So here enter npm run start. Scroll down again and choose the free plan option. Now under the environment variables, you will need to add the variables from your .env file. Open your root.env file, copy the contents and paste them into the environment variables. Leave the backend URL as it is for now. We will update it later. Next, open your frontend.env file. Copy this and paste this here. And click Create Web Service. Once everything is set up, you will see a message build successful and your service is live. Now copy the link provided by render and go to the environment section and click edit and update both backend URL with the new URL provided by render. Click this save, rebuild and deploy button. Render will rebuild your app with the new environment configuration. Once deployment is complete, open the link in your browser. Your app should now be live. By selecting a file in the app, you will receive a generated link. Copy that link, open it in your browser, and you will be able to download the image by using this link.